Welcome to episode 262 of the Simple Flying podcast and our fourth video adaptation. Here's what Simple Flying managing editor Tom Boone and senior editor Channing Reed will be discussing today. They'll begin by discussing how Global Airlines' one A380 is parked. After that, they'll discuss how the Trump administration has threatened to end the Delta Air Mexico joint venture. The first Boeing 777-8F production takes off. There's also a story about teenagers causing havoc on a Virgin Atlantic flight. And then they'll end off with some sad Boeing 747 hotel news. So, let's get started.
I wanted to start with a segment that has been missing recently, and that is
Tom's A380 podcast.
That's right. I wanted to talk about Global Airlines because they've recently sent their only Airbus A380 to Tarbes in France, and this is after completing just 2 round trips between the United Kingdom and New York. The aircraft, registered as 9 Hotel Golf Lima Oscar Bravo Lima, operated flights from Glasgow and Manchester to JFK Airport in May and June of this year. Now, these were part of a limited transatlantic schedule and marked one of the few commercial uses of a second-hand A380 in passenger service. The flights were operated in partnership with Highfly, the Malta-based charter and wet lease provider. Now, following these transatlantic trips, the aircraft was flown to Dresden in Germany for maintenance and technical testing. Then, on July 16th, it was ferried to Tarbes in southern France. This airport is well known within the aviation world for storing large aircraft, especially retired wide-bodies, including many Airbus A380s. Now, that led to immediate speculation that the Global Airlines A380 had been quietly withdrawn from service and placed in long-term storage. However, the airline has firmly denied that, and it says the aircraft is only parked in Tarbes temporarily and is awaiting its next scheduled phase of heavy maintenance. In a public statement, Global Airlines told us it won't be long before it is up in the clouds once again, although I tried pushing and they're giving no dates or information for its return for flying. Now, since being registered in Malta in early 2024, the aircraft has seen limited use, and yes, I spent way too much time last week crunching all the numbers to find that out. So, when you add it all together, it's logged only about 62 hours of flight time over 20 days of flying, and this is across almost 18 months since the aircraft was registered in Malta. Now, aside from its New York routes, the plane was mainly used for test flights and short-haul movements between destinations like Barcelona, Berlin, and London Gatwick, and Manchester even. Now, the low utilization rate highlights the difficulties of operating such a large and complex aircraft without a well-established route network or frequent schedule. At the same time, Tarbes is home to many Airbus A380s that are no longer in service, and these include aircraft formerly flown by airlines like Air France, Lufthansa, and Malaysia Airlines. Now, some of these are being dismantled for parts, while others await their fate. Even Highfly's former A380, the first of its kind to serve in a secondary charter role, is stored at the same facility, having been retired due to cost and maintenance concerns previously. Now, although Global Airlines insists the aircraft will return to service soon, some aviation analysts remain skeptical. The A380 is expensive to operate, and efforts to repurpose second-hand super jumbos have so far struggled to succeed financially. There's also the question of demand. Now, most airlines that once operated A380s on major routes have shifted to smaller, more efficient wide-bodies. Just look at Air France retiring its entire A380 fleet after just 10 years. And, you can't use COVID as the excuse for Air France retiring them, because Etihad used that excuse, but then they brought them back. But I digress. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the Airbus A380's first flight, and while it remains beloved by many passengers for its quiet cabin and spacious layout, its place in modern aviation is increasingly niche. For now, Global Airlines' brief experiment with the Super Jumbo service between the UK and New York appears to be on hold, and whether this particular A380 returns to passenger service is still an open question, though we will, of course, keep our eyes peeled and report the latest as it happens.
We are going to switch gears and talk about a development that has been making headlines really over the past couple of years, but is now back at the top. The Trump administration imposing new restrictions on flights from Mexico and threatened to end a long-standing partnership between Delta Airlines and Aeromexico. It's in response to limits the Mexican government has placed on passenger and cargo flights into Mexico City several years ago. So it is important to note that this is not something new that the Trump administration is imposing. It's been happening even before President Trump took office. We reported about this last year with President Biden's administration as well. But Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said Mexico's actions to force airlines to move out of the main airport that serves Mexico City, which is known as Benito Juarez International Airport, moving them to the newer Felipe Angeles International Airport more than 30 miles away. That violated a trade agreement between the two countries and gave domestic airlines an unfair advantage. Mexico is the top foreign destination for Americans, with more than 40 million passengers flying there just last year. Now, all passenger, cargo, and charter airlines, Mexican passenger cargo and charter airlines, will now be required to submit their schedules to the Department of Transportation and seek government approval of their flights until Secretary Duffy is satisfied with the way that Mexico is treating U.S. airlines. So it's not immediately clear how the department's actions might affect the border trade war that's currently going on with Mexico and negotiations over tariffs. According to the Associated Press, spokesperson for Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, did not reply to any requests for comment, and she didn't mention any new restrictions during either of her two speaking events, which were on Sunday. Now, Secretary Duffy said, quote, Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg deliberately allowed Mexico to break our bilateral aviation agreement. That ends today, letting these actions serve as a warning to any country who thinks it can take advantage of the U.S., our carriers, and our market. America First means fighting for the fundamental principle of fairness. Now, Delta is speaking out in response to this, and the airline said, quote, the U.S. Department of Transportation's tentative proposal to terminate its approval of the strategic and pro-competitive partnership between Delta and Aeromexico would cause significant harm to consumers traveling between U.S. and Mexico, as well as U.S. jobs, communities, and trans-border competition. Now, we do know that their joint venture, if you will, has been something that has brought a lot of success to both airlines. And back in January of 2024, that is when we first started really seeing that the government wasn't happy with this whole partnership. And so last year, the Department of Transportation had ordered that their partnership would end in October of 2024. Of course, it's seemingly continued, and now the government is looking for this partnership to end in October of this year. So it is quite interesting, a quite interesting development. I was actually reading what a lot of people are saying online. One Reddit thread, people were saying that this is essentially would be a step down from their joint venture. It would make the two airlines look more like a basic code sharing agreement, and as there are differences there with a joint venture. And they're saying that the Aeromexico would go more of like a close partner to more of a distant partner that is within the same alliance, which is the SkyTeam Alliance. Other people are saying that this is a good thing for consumers. Of course, we know that there are other Mexican airlines, but as I mentioned, that this order terminating the approval of the agreement between the airlines wouldn't take effect until October of this year. And of course, the airlines are likely going to continue fighting that decision. The airlines, both Delta and Aeromexico, said in a previous filing that they believe that the order would represent a loss of direct flights and would prompt over 140,000 American tourists and nearly 90,000 Mexican tourists to not enter either country and hurt the economies of both countries with their loss of spending. So we'll have to follow this as the developments continue. This is something that's been going on for a while now, and it appears that the Trump administration is really putting their foot down on this.
I wanted to talk about another company that falls under maybe not the Department of Transportation, but definitely the FAA, and that is Boeing. And we had some sort of Boeing did reach a major milestone this week in the development of its newest aircraft, cargo aircraft even, which is going to be the 777-8 freighter. So yesterday, or on July 21st, production began on the first aircraft's wing spar at Boeing's Composite Wing Center in Everett, Washington. Now, this moment is significant because the wing spar is the primary structural component of the wing, and it's stretching approximately 108 feet long, bearing the loads and stresses encountered during flight. The manufacturing process is very technical. It involves highly automated techniques, and alongside the wing spar, Boeing and its partners in Japan, so Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, Kawasaki Heavy Industries, and Subaru, producing skin panels and other structures that will form the aircraft's wings. The global collaboration reflects the complexity and scale of such a program. Now, originally slated for entry into service in 2027, Boeing now expects the first 777-8 freighter in 2028. The first flight was targeted for 2026. Now, once operational, the Dash 8 freighter will be the largest twin-engine freighter in the world, offering significant improvements in fuel efficiency, so up to 30% better, and lower emissions compared to previous models. Operational costs per ton are projected to be around 25% lower, while noise footprints will be reduced by up to 60%. Now, the 777-8 freighter has attracted healthy customer interest with 59 firm orders placed to date. Qatar Airways is the launch customer, and that's accounting for a big chunk of those orders. But other customers include ANA, Cargo Lux, Silkway West, and Lufthansa. Boeing projects that by 2044, demand will rise sharply for large wide-body freighters, requiring nearly 900 new aircraft in this class. Now, while the program has faced delays due to technical challenges, including issues found during testing and supply chain disruptions, the start of wing spar production signals that the company is moving forward confidently. The event was marked by celebrations at the Everett facility involving over 100 workers and executives. Now, this step is crucial as it transitions the 777-8 freighter from design to the testing phases and then to actual assembly, and it's inching closer to becoming a key player in the future of global air cargo. So, exciting times for the 777-8 freighter, although I'm still a bit, watch this space. I will see when Boeing gets around to delivering a 777-9 and then make my thoughts from there. But yeah, it's be exciting to see another new plane on the market, and hopefully another new plane that we can see at air shows.
I think also, pairing this with the 737 MAX 7 and the MAX 10 as well. Yeah, it's kind of like almost at this point, it's like, okay, I'll believe it when I see it, when it gets delivered. But didn't we cover just a few months ago that Lufthansa was going to be the first customer of the 777X, and they were going to have it, they're expecting it to be delivered next year, right?
Yeah, I know they're expecting it to be delivered next year. I'm never too sure exactly who the first customer will be, because I've heard several people say we will be the first customer. I once sat down with Akbar Al-Bakr, former CEO of Qatar Airways. He told me he was going to be the first to get the 777X. I'm pretty sure either Tim Clark or Sheikh Ahmed of Emirates have also at one point or another said they're going to get the first one. So we'll wait and see. I don't think it's maybe it has and I've missed it, but yeah, we'll see.
Another story that we want to cover today is related to some unruly passengers. It's a group of U.S. teenagers. They were arrested after, quote, screaming and running amok on a recent Virgin Atlantic flight. This happened from Los Angeles to London. The Independent was one of the first to report on this development. 9 teenagers reportedly used fake IDs to purchase alcohol before consuming it once on board Virgin Atlantic Flight 8 on Monday, July 14th. This, of course, alarmed passengers and crew, which were subjected to antisocial and disrupted behavior, prompting pilots to radio ahead to London and let local police know and have them attend the scene when the plane arrived in London. Now, law enforcement again arrested the teenagers. They were taken into custody, where also their mugshots and fingerprints were reportedly taken. It is Important to note, of course, you can purchase alcohol in the airport, but you obviously cannot drink it on board, consume it on board. And these teenagers were eventually returned back to the US, I believe. They were traveling to summer camps across Europe and are reportedly from wealthy families. Virgin Atlantic initially refused to fly the teenagers back after the incident, but later changed course, reportedly taking quote, revenge by separating the teenagers and transporting them back to different cities across the U.S. and informing their parents, some of whom are alleged to be celebrity sports stars. There's a plot twist there. Yeah. The Metropolitan Police confirmed that the 9 individuals aged 17 and 18 were arrested at Heathrow Airport after disembarking the aircraft. They were, of course, arrested on suspicion of failing to comply with crew directions and endangering the aircraft. Virgin Atlantic, of course, releasing a statement about this incident saying, quote, "We'd like to apologize to customers for any inconvenience caused following the arrival of VS8 at London Heathrow on July 14th due to disrupted passengers being apprehended by the authorities." This incident is one of nearly 700 unruly passenger reports that were received by the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, so far from January to May. Of course, the FAA has had zero tolerance policy regarding disrupted passenger behavior, but notably, there has been a spike in incidents since 2021 following the pandemic.
Well, I don't have a good segue, so I'm going to rather segue from my 777 story into another aircraft that has faced a lot of retirements, but from Boeing. That is the 747. And I mean, if you've ever dreamed of spending the night in a Boeing 747, there was once a place where that was possible. For more than 15 years, aviation fans from around the world have visited the Jumbo Stay Hotel, located right at the entrance to Stockholm Arlanda Airport. But that unique experience has now come to an end, as I sadly found out when I was in the city in June. I've always wanted to stay at this hotel, and I went to book a hotel, much to maybe the dismay of my wife, who was like, why? But earlier this year, the hotel shut down permanently since its operator filed for bankruptcy. Now, the former aircraft, once flown by Singapore Airlines, has been transformed into a full hotel. It offers 33 rooms, 78 beds, ranging from dormitory-style accommodations to a fully outfitted cockpit suite with panoramic of the runway. And I think it even also had rooms in the engines. But anyway, the project began back in 2009 when the retired Boeing 747-200 was repurposed into a hotel. It quickly became a favorite amongst plane spotters and curious travelers, offering people the chance to sleep inside one of the most iconic passenger jets ever built. But in March, Jumbo Stay officially closed its doors for good. The hotel's operator, Oscar Dios, said income had dropped dramatically. In fact, it had cut in half from over 8 million Swedish krona in 2019 to just 4 million by 2023. So that's a fall from roughly 820,000 US dollars to around 410,000 US dollars. Now, combined with increasing competition and the loss of advertising rights at the airport, the business could no longer sustain operations. Now, there were efforts to sell the hotel and preserve the aircraft on site, but no buyer came forward. And even more concerning, the bankruptcy estate had no funds available to dismantle or remove the aircraft. The bankruptcy administrator, Daniel Svensson, put it bluntly, "There's simply no money to handle the removal of an airplane, so the asset had to be left where it was." Obviously, the 747 has to be someone's problem, right? Well, that's left the responsibility with Swedavia, the state-owned company that operates Sweden's airports and owns the land beneath the aircraft. The aircraft is now considered abandoned, and Swedavia has made it clear that it will not lease the land to any new operator. So that decision effectively ends any hope of keeping the 747 intact as a hotel or visitor attraction. So what happens next? Well, most likely the aircraft will be dismantled and broken up. It's a sad moment for aviation enthusiasts, especially those who appreciate the creative reuse of a retired jumbo jet. So that's the sad one. If you're going to want to get your 747 hotel fix, you're going to have to go to the Corridon Hotel in Amsterdam now, I guess.
Yeah, that I guess I'll be going there. I didn't even know that this was a thing. That's so cool.
Definitely.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We hope you enjoyed it, and we welcome any feedback you might have at editorial@simpleflying.com.
For more great content, you can visit our website at simpleflying.com or find us on social media. Simply search for Simple Flying.
And if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a rating on your favorite podcast player. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
In addition to our daily YouTube videos, Simple Flying publishes over 150 articles and a podcast every week. Visit simpleflying.com.